A Soviet Childhood Story, Episode 5, When He Came Back. Part 1, The Sound of Keys. It had been 2 years. The door to apartment 3 opened not with a bang, but with the slow, cautious click of keys that no longer felt familiar. Yuriy stood in the doorway, unsure of whether he was stepping into the past or begging for a future. His bag was light, but his eyes carried weight. Andrew, now 4, looked up from the hallway floor where he was lining up matchbox cars. He froze, not in joy, not in fear, just confusion. His father's face was distant, like a dream from early childhood, warm, blurry, and unreliable. Olya stood from the table, drying her hands on a faded towel. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. "You're home," she said quietly. Part 2. New furniture, old walls. The apartment hadn't changed much, same peeling wallpaper, same burnt-out bulb in the hallway. But the air was different. The children were older. Lena, now 6, was tall and sharp-eyed. She watched Yuriy the way you watch a dog that once bit you. Olya didn't ask questions. Not yet. She set a plate for him. He ate slowly. No vodka, no cigarettes at the table, her rules. He obeyed, for now. That night, he slept on the couch. The bedroom was still hers. Part 3. Kindergarten Blues. Andrew had started kindergarten a year earlier and hated every second. The building was gray, cold in the morning, and always smelled like boiled cabbage. His teacher, Tamara Ivanovna, had a sharp tone and never called him by name, just, "You, boy." She always seemed annoyed by his silence, by the way he stared at the floor instead of answering questions. But worst of all was Miroslava, a pale, assertive girl who seemed to control everything. She would point at him during quiet time, whisper mean things, laugh if he cried. Other kids followed her lead. They never called Andrew to play tag or build with blocks. He sat alone most days. Sometimes he told Mama, sometimes he didn't. What could she do? She already carried too much. Part 4. The Man Who Fixes Screens. Yuriy didn't talk much that first week. He bought a screwdriver set, brought home an old broken TV someone gave him, took it apart on the balcony with a cigarette in his mouth and a mug of tea growing cold nearby. Andrew watched from the corner. "Want to hand me that wire?" Yuriy asked one afternoon. Andrew stepped closer. Slowly. Something opened up between them. Not warmth, not yet, but space and possibility. Part 5. Market Mornings. Olya, meanwhile, had changed. In the 2 years without Yuriy, she had learned survival. The polyclinic job barely paid anymore. So she started waking at dawn, traveling to the market with a worn canvas bag full of socks, children's pajamas, and ribbons. It was dangerous work now. The early 90s were chaotic. Fights, thieves, taxes that changed weekly. But she made enough. Enough for Lena's new school shoes. Enough for sugar. Sometimes even chocolate. She was tired, but it was a proud tired. A free tired. Part 6. Kitchen Conversations. Late one night, after the kids had gone to bed, Yuriy stood in the kitchen doorway. "I know I wasn't what you needed," he said. Olya didn't look up from the teacup in her hand, but she didn't leave either. "I tried to run from shame," he continued. "It followed me anyway." The silence was thick, but it wasn't cruel. It was honest. Part 7. First bell. Lena was starting school. 7 years old, her uniform hung awkwardly from her thin shoulders, but she stood proud. Andrew followed a year behind. He was small for his age, barely reached the teacher's desk, but his eyes burned with something fierce. Quiet boys can still be brave. They walked hand in hand the first morning. Yuriy walked behind, unsure if he belonged in the picture. Olya carried a bouquet for the teacher. She had tied Andrew's tie twice that morning, and Lena's ribbon had already unraveled. Part 8. The yard is a kingdom. After school, Andrew ruled the yard. He was a storm in a small body, hide and seek, football, chasing shadows until dusk. Though small, he was strong, fast, relentless, and full of wild ideas. Lena watched from the benches, drawing in her notebook or reading borrowed books. She was the serious one, the thoughtful one. But her eyes always followed Andrew, the protector she never asked for, but trusted anyway. Part 9. Grandmothers and rumors. Both sets of grandparents lived in the village. They had known each other for decades, planted potatoes side by side, danced at weddings, wept at funerals. But when Yuriy left, so did peace. Olya's mother refused to speak to Yuriy's. "Raised him wrong," she'd mutter, chopping beets. Yuriy's father, a hard man with a limp, called Yuriy a coward behind his back. "You broke your own house," he'd say. "Fix it, or live alone." By the time Yuriy returned, the wounds weren't fresh, but they scarred everything. Part 10. New roles, old ghosts. Yuriy kept fixing TVs. Word spread. He started getting small jobs, 5 rubles here, a jar of pickles there. The living room filled with tubes and wires and static flickers. Olya became the market woman. She stitched labels onto pants, wrapped scarves in plastic, argued prices like a diplomat. Their roles were reversed, and somehow, it worked. Part 11. Night fears. Some nights, Andrew still woke with tears, the memory of Miroslava, of teachers' scolding voices, of being ignored and unwanted. They didn't leave easily. But now, there were nights when Yuriy came to his bedside. "Go back to sleep," Yuriy would whisper. "I'm here." And slowly, that meant something. Part 12. Fire in the distance. The country was changing. The flag had changed. The shops looked different. Words like privatization and inflation crept into adult conversations. Lena listened from behind doors. Andrew didn't understand. He cared more about the new boy with a foreign jacket who moved into Building 5. But the adults knew. This wasn't the USSR anymore. It was something unknown. Part 13. 2 years together. 2 years had passed since Yuriy's return. They still had fights. Old habits crept back. The TV stayed on too long. Vodka returned on weekends. But it was different now. There was effort. There was trying. One night, Yuriy gave Olya a repaired iron for her market clothes. "Works now," he said. She nodded. "So do we." Part 14. Not the same boy. Andrew wasn't the same boy who used to wait at the door. He still had fears, still hesitated in crowds, but there was a new weight in his walk, a spine, a knowing, something unspoken that came from enduring and surviving disappointment. Part 15. The long winter snow returned. The yard fell silent. The market was colder. But the house, apartment 3, had laughter again. Small, quiet laughter. The kind that lives between broken things being repaired. Because sometimes broken families don't shatter. Sometimes they heal.